From Iago to Captain Ahab, literature has given us a wide variety of villains and explorations of what evil is. In this video, I will be discussing 4 books by 4 different authors, and their representations of good and evil. Part 1. The Marriage of Heaven and Hell and Goethe's Faust. The Marriage of Heaven and Hell was a book written by William Blake between 1790 and 1793. The book is written mainly in prose aside from the opening poem. I would say, though, that the whole work has a poetic texture to its writing, especially the middle part, the Proverbs of Hell. In the book, Blake subverts the typical view of heaven and hell, of good and evil. Heaven is order, hell is unrestrained desire. I was walking among the fires of hell, delighted with the enjoyments of genius which, to angels, look like torment and insanity. This changes the traditional duality of heaven and hell by declaring hell not as a place of eternal torment, but as a place of unbridled energy. We see this in some of the proverbs of hell. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. He who desires but acts not breeds pestilence. Dip him in the river who loves water. These proverbs encourage experience, they encourage action that may otherwise be unadvised. It is usual in Christian morality to deny, to suppress desire, yet in hell it is said, "Sooner murder an infant in its cradle than nurse enacted desires." These proverbs are extreme. The point is to present a contrast between the two. The reader is neither fully on the side of heaven, nor are they fully on the side of hell. We can see the benefits of both. Hell, in its emphasis on action, can make people wise from experience, and fulfilling desire is much healthier for the individual, yet we can see its obvious drawbacks. Fulfilling one's desires without limits can be dangerous. This is where most people sympathize with heaven. Its promise of order and restraint helps curb dangerous desires, but yet we see that this can create stasis. In a controversial section of the book, a devil and an angel are debating on how to worship God. The devil says you should worship God by loving great men best, because God endowed them with the gifts that made them great. The angel responds and says that one should only worship God who took the human form in Jesus Christ and who sanctioned the 10 Commandments. The devil responds as follows. If Jesus Christ is the greatest man, you ought to love him in the greatest degree. Now, hear how he has given his sanction to the law of the 10 Commandments. Did he not mock at the Sabbath, and so mock the Sabbath's God? Murder those who were murdered because of him? Turn away the law from the woman taken in adultery? Steal the labour of others to support him? Bear false witness when he omitted making a defence before Pilate? Covet when he prayed for his disciples? And when he bid them shake off the dust of their feet against such as refused to lodge them? I tell you, no virtue can exist without breaking these 10 Commandments. And he ends the speech with this. Jesus was all virtue, and acted from impulse, not from rules. In a sense, this sums up one of the book's main arguments. Heaven brings stasis, hell, reinvention. The point of the book, to me, is to question common morality, to present 2 opposing ideas of morality and pit them against each other. As is said in the book, without contraries is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate, are necessary to the human existence. Things that are commonplace today at one point seemed revolutionary. The point is this: there can be no progress without breaking accepted moral law. Reading Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell reminded me of another work that had a unique take on good and evil. Goethe's Faust was a closet drama that is a play meant to be read, not performed, written in rhyming verse, published separately in 2 parts, the first in 1808, the second posthumously in 1832. Faust is an old German legend about a man who sells his soul to the devil, loosely based on the historical Johann Georg Faust, who was denounced as a blasphemer in league with Satan. The play itself is a reworking of this myth. Faust is an old scholar who in his middle age grows bored and listless with life, and, in his ennui, makes a pact with the demon Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles will serve Faust, give him anything he wants, but if there is a moment that he wishes to keep, if there is a moment where he goes, "Stay a while, you are so beautiful," then Mephistopheles will get his soul. Faust is so deep in his ennui, he doubts that there is anything of worth in this entire world. Something that jumps out to me initially is how Mephistopheles' evil is presented. We never see him do anything explicitly evil throughout the book, aside from helping Faust in his seduction of Gretchen. He shows no great lust, no propensity to torture. Instead, we get this speech from him. "I am the spirit that negates, and rightly so, for all that comes to be deserves to perish wretchedly. Were better nothing would begin, thus everything that your terms sin, destruction, and evil represent. That is my proper element. I am the spirit that negates. There is no action here, no evil deed he wants to commit, but instead a simple thought. Were better nothing would begin. We see echoes of Schopenhauer in his speech, a deeply pessimistic sentiment not only against good but against life itself. One of the unique things about Goethe's reworking of the myth is the ending. Faust is redeemed. He goes to heaven. In no other version does Faust end up there. Faust commits more horrendous acts than Mephistopheles is even shown to do. His seduction of Gretchen, convincing her to drug her mother, and flat-out murdering her brother, and yet, in the second part, we see him ascend to heaven. Why? Let's explore the second part of the tragedy. The second part is wildly different in tone and setting than the first. The setting is ancient Greece, 2,000 years before the time of the first part, and features figures from Greek mythology. Towards the end, in Act 5, Faust grows old but has a powerful position in society, and during his project to build a castle, he sees a peasant's hut and a nearby chapel. Impeding the construction of his castle, he orders their destruction. Mephistopheles obliges, and ends up murdering the peasants along with the removal of their lodgings. Faust feels guilt at this, and from this is motivated to better the lives of those under him. As a result of this noble project, he says the following: "As I presage happiness so high, I now enjoy the highest moment." Mephistopheles is delighted and tries to drag his soul to hell, yet he is saved by the Virgin Mary, who listens to the pleading of Gretchen among other souls. Faust is saved, not because he is good, but because he embodies a constant striving. He has sinned, yet we see him at his happiest when he recognizes humanity's potential. When he decides on his project of the castle, he is embracing life, embracing struggle. Conversely, Mephistopheles exemplifies the denial of life, and therefore can never be redeemed. In Faust, we see evil presented as a denial of life, and we see good, not as a person who has done no harm, but the person who has sinned yet strives for perfection. The sinner who strives is better than the one who has never sinned at all. Part 2. The Flowers of Evil. Charles Baudelaire was a French poet, 1821 to 1867, who is mainly remembered for his book, The Flowers of Evil, a collection of poetry. After its release in 1857, it was subject to an obscenity trial which resulted in the removal of 6 poems. The 6 chosen were mainly banned for their sensuality and depiction of lesbianism. The book itself was controversial at the time, describing such subjects as murder, violence, prostitution and crime in high poetic language. The Flowers of Evil harbours a central conflict that lies between the beauty of the poetry and the vileness of its subject. In Baudelaire's poetry, evil is presented as inevitable, lazy and habitual. He presents it as a result of boredom or ennui, as seen in the last lines of the introductory poem. There is one more ugly, more wicked, more filthy. Although he makes neither great gestures nor great cries, he would willingly make the earth a shambles, and in a yawn swallow the world. He is ennui. Baudelaire held an unshakable belief in original sin, and decried the moralistic writers of his time. He was a Catholic, and Christianity deeply influenced his views surrounding evil. To Baudelaire, not even children are innocent. He repeats St. Augustine's declaration that no man is free from sin, not even a child who has lived only one day on earth. This is especially prominent in the prose poem The Cake, where 2 children fight over a piece of bread. In The Flowers of Evil, sin is universal. We see this in the closing line of the introductory poem. Hypocrite reader, my twin, my brother. He claims that the reader is just like him. Baudelaire claimed that humans had 2 simultaneous postulations, one towards God, the other towards Satan. This duality is reflected in the book, as the high and airy poetic language is juxtaposed next to the dirt of its vulgar subjects. It is the brilliance of life, it is the bleakness of life. The book reflects human existence. It is mired in evil because humanity is mired in evil, and yet there is beauty there. According to Baudelaire, virtue is artificial. Evil is committed without effort, naturally, fatally. Goodness is always the product of some art. In his poem, The Rebel, we see that, even when commanded to choose good, man will always resist. In the poem, an angel comes down and commands a sinner to turn to goodness, yet he declines. Then the angel, cruel as he was kind, with giant hands twisted him till he whined, but the damned soul still answered, I will not. For Baudelaire, humanity is hopeless. His view is a bleak one, and helps form a brilliant dark aesthetic in his poetry. Part 3. Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights was a novel published in 1847 by English writer Emily Bronte. It is mainly concerned with Heathcliff and his relationships with 2 families, the Earnshaws and the Lintons. Upon reading the novel, one is instantly accosted by the dramatic poetic grandeur of its speeches. Catherine and Heathcliff's speeches hold a thunder that would not be out of place in a play of great tragedy. In fact, I think in many ways the novel is a direct descendant of the tragic plays of old. It would work well as a play if not for its length. I do think the psychology of its characters reaches the height of the best of the classic tragedies. An early review unintentionally cements the power of the work. How a human being could have attempted such a book as the present without committing suicide before he had finished a dozen chapters is a mystery. So it read. Heathcliff is a poor orphan boy described as a dark-skinned gypsy who was adopted by the Earnshaws. For the duration of his childhood he is dominated and beaten by his older brother Hindley, and, conversely, shares an intense friendship with his sister Catherine, which, as he gets older, turns to love. Catherine's choice to marry Edgar as opposed to Heathcliff is the moment that spurs Heathcliff's desire for revenge. The ferocity and brutality of his hatred is surprising throughout the novel. An interesting thing to consider is that, aside from marrying Isabella without her brother's consent, and later on forcing Cathy Jr. to marry his own son, Heathcliff breaks few laws in his revenge. Heathcliff even mentions this. "Had I been born where laws are less strict and tastes less dainty, I should treat myself to a slow vivisection of those two as an evening's amusement." Heathcliff claims the law restricts his revenge, but we also see it solidify it. Catherine and Isabella both have little defence against Heathcliff's evil, as the law is not only on his side, but they are constrained by it themselves. We see that despite the advent of laws, we always seem to have evil seeping in, and, in many cases, we see the law take the side of evil. It was common for the Victorian novel to have a clear line drawn between good and evil. We see this in the work of Charles Dickens and Robert Louis Stevenson. Wuthering Heights was different in this regard, as it doesn't deny the possibility of evil in its more sympathetic characters. Catherine Earnshaw loves an evil man. She retains this love even when she is fully aware of his cruelty, as seen when Catherine reveals her sister-in-law's affections to him, and he responds by saying, "I like her too ill to attempt it, except in a very ghoulish fashion. You'd hear of odd things if I lived alone with that mawkish waxen face. The most ordinary would be painting on its white the colours of the rainbow, and turning the blue eyes black every day or two. They detestably resemble Linton's." Despite his evident hatred of everything to do with Linton and even Catherine herself, she still stands by him. Catherine is not ignorant of Heathcliff's violent moods and behaviour. In her famous confession to Ellen, she claims, "I am Heathcliff," quite a dramatic sentiment. Heathcliff is Cathy in different circumstances. It is only because of Cathy's relative lack of power that she doesn't take revenge. It is also her lack of economic power that she marries Edgar as well. She clearly resents Edgar, and yet the only act of aggression towards him is through Heathcliff, where she locks him in with her husband during a violent confrontation in order to prevent any servants from coming to his aid. The only chance she gets to harm her husband is through Heathcliff. I think if she had the economic and social power, she might be as dangerous as Heathcliff himself. As Isabella herself says, "Catherine had an awfully perverted taste to esteem him so dearly, knowing him so well, monster." Heathcliff's hatred is all-consuming. It is almost mythic at times. Why is he so obsessed with Catherine? Why is his resentment so deep, his love so lasting? His upbringing is a clue. He was resented and bullied by Hindley, even Catherine disliked him at first. The blooming of love between him and Catherine was probably the first strong positive emotion he felt. Securing that love was an act of self-preservation. He has no real justification for his revenge, not even to himself. He does it because he wants to take back power, to make up for when he was powerless, inflicting on others what the world has inflicted on him. Making others suffer causes him satisfaction.